Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the new, I'm using air quotes here, Optio, which is a tier 7 Italian premium cruiser. Light cruiser, we don't see terribly many of those. Most of those are 203 mil equipped heavier cruisers. So having a light cruiser here at tier 7 premium available to you in 14.8 in the event pass. The second progression line though, so you have to spend 2,500 doubloons to get access to this ship. But it's based entirely off of Ferruccio, which is why I needed to cover it today, not only to get an updated look at Ferruccio, but a 2,500 doubloon tier 7 premium is an alright deal if this ship appeals to you. Ferruccio has 152mm main guns, with the shell velocity and range to match heavier cruisers. We actually have better shell velocity here than the Zara would have, the Tech Tree Italian cruiser, as well as having a little bit better SAP DPM. Our HE DPM is quite abysmal on this ship. SAP and HE are our options here, but I found it to do some reasonably consistent damage, as well as quite easy to lead these guns at longer ranges. We retain an Italian smoke, which is very useful for a light cruiser, let me tell you. There are plenty of situations where it is difficult to play this class, and having the ability to go dark whenever you want to is so nice. Our smoke fire is like 4.4 kilometers or something like that. Ridiculously useful to have, but it's cut down. It's only a 22-second duration versus the 40-second duration we usually see on these Italian smokes. So very much a bursty smoke, only to be used in the worst of situations. You won't find it very useful to farm out of this smoke. So that's why I want to use it generally if I get myself into a bad position. The other thing about this ship is its concealment is absolutely incredible, allowing you to more easily sneak up on enemy destroyers, supporting your DD in that role. 11 kilometers does not look great, but consider that I'm playing a full lighthouse build here, and it's still 11 kilometer detect with 17.5 kilometers of range. Very, very comfortable to use this ship, even with this build. Just running heavy HE and SAP, which does buff your alpha damage quite a lot, allows us to have a 9.9 kilometer detect. So very stealthy, allows you to choose your engagements when they start and when those engagements end. That is the benefit of Italian cruisers with this smokescreen, and especially a light cruiser with smaller caliber guns, better smoke fire, more consistently able to disengage after firing. Sometimes with the heavier cruisers, and certainly with the battleships, you'll have to wait for your detection bloom, that 20-second time after firing, to go away before you'll actually go dark in your smokescreen. Now this is just an okay tier 7 cruiser. I found it farmed pretty reasonable damage, but we're not bringing a lot of utility, and it certainly lacks a lot of armor. It's quite quick, its rudder shift is decent, as is its turning circle radius. Surprisingly good there, but it's still just a light cruiser at tier 7. Those up tiers into tier 9 certainly hurt. So does getting stuck on an island by planning your positioning poorly. Let's just ignore that for now. Let's focus in on our main gun shell damage. These are only 152 mil guns, and yet we're still getting some very, very nice salvos into these cruisers. You need to be able to pen 42 millimeters of armor. That's what the enemy needs to have in order for your SAP to do good damage. That is very easy to find at high tier, but at these lower mid-tier levels, we'll find some lower tier battleships have some incredibly powerful upper belt armor and small superstructures. I find as we get into higher tier, battleships tend to have a little bit less armor on their upper belts. Not all of them, but consistently I'm finding more ships, more battleships that I can farm easier with the SAP at higher tier. So if you get in that down tier, it can be a bit of an issue. But look at the shell velocity, out to 15 kilometers, 8.5 seconds. It is very easy to lead these guns. 8k alpha damage per salvo like that when we're landing a lot of our shells. It's not a bad light cruiser. The rear turret is 360 degrees. It's a decent tier 7 premium if you're interested in what an Italian light cruiser would look like. We don't see very many of those. It really has just been Ferruccio as well as Gonzaga that have the SAP shells. We get Duca d'Aosta as well as Duca Abruzzi at tier 7, but those have AP and HE. They were before the SAP shells came into being, I think. Maybe the tier 7 wasn't. But you don't have SAP on those ones, so it is a little bit of a different playstyle. Makes me interested to see what a light cruiser line would look like Gonzaga at tier 9 is quite a bit better, of course. Way higher DPM. The DPM here is just okay for a tier 7 light cruiser, but I think what sets it apart has to be its shell velocity. Out to our maximum, like 17 kilometers of range, it's still a 10.3 second flight time, which is almost unheard of at these tiers especially. It is very, very easy to lead these shells. And the other benefit this ship will have is the standard Italian torps. You actually get 13.5 kilometers of range, a little bit more than we see on the Zara, the Tech Tree tier 7 cruiser. And they do 13,900 alpha damage. Again, a little bit more. We're seeing some of those higher tier torps. They're still very slow at 56 knots. They have a 2-minute reload. But nice for zoning out areas. You can do plenty of stealth torping with this thing. I wouldn't necessarily use it to YOLO with, unless you're very close around island cover, because that smoke doesn't last very long. 22 seconds is not a long time if you're trying to YOLO in on someone. So only if you're very, very close like this, or someone isn't quite paying attention. Now, this is definitely a unique experience available for 2,500 doubloons. We're going to go over the new update tomorrow, actually, once it drops on NA, so I can show you guys all the features of it. As Wargaming have been doing a great job the last updates to give a lot of content for everyone, not just people who spend a ton of money on this game. Of course, you should be earning doubloons every time you play these days, so you may be tempted to use 2,500 for the Opio. Optio. I'm bad with pronunciations, of course. I don't know why Wargaming decided to make this an entirely new ship. To me, it seems like they could have just put Ferruccio in with this new camo. It's not a 3D camo, by the way. I'll show you that in port when we look at the armor, too. A little disappointed, Wargaming. Art department usually does a pretty good job, but when we see these SPQR camos on the Italian battleship line when that was released, there was a lot of 3D elements to those camos. This is just a texture on the side of the ship with, it seems like a steel camo type reflection pattern. Not my favorite. I don't know why, other than maybe we're trying to dilute the premium ship pool for Santa crates or something like that. I don't know. That is pure speculation on my part. But why else would we copy Ferruccio exactly and not really change up anything else about it? We had a tier 7 game and we performed incredibly well. What happens when you get into tier 9 battles? That is the problem. Cruisers, hard to play, so you need to play very cautiously. I'm probably playing too aggressive here. We're far away, sure, but notice how there's not many of my teammates around here. You gotta pay attention to the minimap. We will take a lot of focus here, so it's time I use my smoke screen. You need to be able to find island cover. There should be on most maps. Now, there's a few exceptions to that, being Mountain Range and like Okinawa. Those are getting fixed though, soon, hopefully. But you should be able to find island cover that you can farm over. And that's what I'm going to do here. Even into a tier 9 game, or a light tier 9 game, there's not too many tier 9s, we're still going to do some decent damage here. I should mention that these sap shells have very good ricochet angles at 70 to 80 degrees. That's pretty common for the cruiser sap, but it is worth mentioning sometimes they tone that down on some certain ships. I think it's the destroyers that have a little bit worse, the Italian DDs. So it's nice to have here, as is 42 millimeters of pen at these higher tiers especially. But overall, this seems like it could be a decent pickup if you're interested in Italian light cruisers with sap while retaining their smoke gimmick that a lot of the Italian ships do get. It's an alright ship, but I wouldn't spend the doubloons on it if you don't like mid-tier light cruisers. No heal on this one can be a big problem, as we're about to see. The armor, also not great on this thing if you get caught. We have to be very, very careful. You don't need Sansonetti, I guess. That is another benefit of this ship. The insane range means we don't really need any more range than this on our first kill. That's what Sansonetti would get. As well as we don't really need extra consumable duration because our smokes don't last very long anyway. A second or two more isn't going to make much difference in my opinion. But you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments down below, especially if you already have Ferruccio. I realize now after looking, that ship was only available during a Salvage a Victory event back when Kitakami was released and Defense. That was 2023 Christmas, so a while ago. Maybe it was back after that, I'm not sure, but perhaps this is your way to get access to this playstyle. Maybe that's a good reason to go for it in this battle pass. It's not too bad on the cost, 2,500, not inflated like that. And at the very end of the first track, that's the free progression track. You don't actually have to spend any doubloons if you get all the way to the end. you get a tier 7 premium container. So guaranteed tier 7 as a reward there too. So not a bad battle pass this update. Again, we will be going over the entire update tomorrow. But I know some people will see Optio and wonder, what is this thing for 2,500 doubloons? As well as, I just haven't taken a look at Ferruccio in a very long time. It surprised me how good the shell velocity was on this ship. Playing it stationary behind islands is harder to get that roll going. We managed it here a little bit. Although now we're about to be overrun. Should get some okay damage in on the DD here if I aim right. But that's a battleship on our flank. Very close. And we get absolutely smashed bow on. This is a very exposed citadel and very, very little armor. So a difficult premium to play. But if you're interested, that is what's available in the Battle Pass. And as for the build that I was running on this ship, I decided to go for a full lighthouse build since I wanted a little bit more DPM out of this thing. So lighthouse being, we're trying to get spotted so that we can get outnumbered procced on our flank, but more importantly, top grade gunner too, better reload, better dispersion and speed. Heavy HE and sap making our concealment worse when we're using it. Also synergizes quite well here. Harder to play that role, but it does give us more damage, more DPM. And since we have so much range, I often consider the difference between our detection and our maximum gun range to be how comfortable a ship is to play. The more distance, the more comfortable it generally is, because you can decide when to open up, or if you do get spotted, someone's probably within range for you to start firing at. If it's very narrow distance between your main gun range and your detection, it can be tricky. You feel like you're locked out of more games, which isn't a very fun experience, especially here considering we have amazing shell velocity. You shouldn't be feeling like you're locked out of very many battles, although you will have to play very cautious into those up tiers. Not a lot of HP here, and certainly we have a massive problem with the armor. 25 deck is not bad, but a lot of shot catchers here. It's a very large cruiser and very overmatchable. This is not our Citadel protection quite yet, but it is very above water. And you can see where that Florida was able to Citadel us pretty easily through our bow. There is no armor here that's going to stop his shells, and this is pretty weak armor here too. And even if he managed to get into this gap, well, he overmatches through the 20 millimeters anyway. So it's not like we're going to have any black hole armor things here. You're just going to get smashed. It is a tricky ship to play, certainly, but having light cruiser guns, 152s with sap, is a unique playstyle. And again, let me know if Ferruccio was available after that salvage event back in 2023. I'm not sure that it was. So this might be the first time you're actually able to get access to this ship again. As for a bit more normal build, something like this maybe, although I'm not sure why I have Eye in the Sky on this one. You could probably go Consumables Enhancements, for example. Get a little bit more duration out of that smoke would be handy for panic turnaways when you're caught bow in, perhaps. Something like this, you still get 9.9 kilometers of detect. That is very, very good, while still retaining the buff of heavy HE and sap shells. But if you decide to not go with heavy HE, I'm not sure about the rest of this. This is just a commander I had that had conceal, but not heavy HE and sap. I'm not sure about the rest of these skills. But 8.6 as your best detection is kind of insane. 620 meter turning circle radius is like destroyer level. Rudder shift time is excellent still. And maximum speed, you're very, very fast around the map too. So a solid flanking cruiser that can push up to capture zones behind destroyers very easily and almost single-handedly win those initial DD trades while being able to get out of bad situations with the smoke gen. Not a bad play style, but it's a light cruiser and it's rather difficult to play. And look at this camo. I hope you can tell on the video, but it's not actually a 3D model here. This is just a texture on the side of the ship. And looking at the picture that they show on the website, you almost think that it's like a tan camo here, but no, it's actually a little bit shiny. Certainly in battle, it's very reflective. Here in port, a little bit less so. It's a little bit strange. Also, just a funny characteristic of this ship is your rear turret 360, very nice. Front is not a 360 turret. You have 30-degree firing angles while kiting, but when pushing, you only get 30-degree firing angles on the left side. These AA gun mounts actually get in your way. So this one being positioned here makes it 35 degrees this way, 30 degrees this way. So if you're pushing, try and have your guns on the left side of your ship. Very, very strange, but an odd quirk of this thing. And now that I give it a little more thought, maybe my judgment of them diluting the premium ship pool is a little bit too harsh. Perhaps there's something around Ferruccio and its release in that salvage event that makes it unique to that event, and to get the same ship's playstyle out, they had to create a different one. Perhaps that's the reason as well. There are other options than Wargaming just diluting the ship pool, and I should mention that too. But again, let me know what you think about this ship, especially if you already have Ferruccio. Let me know about the playstyle so people can get a decent representation of its playstyle in the comments below too, not just my thoughts on it here. But thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.